Excuse me, the delivery entrance is around the side.
I'm not making a delivery. I have a 2 o'clock appointment.
An appointment with which department?
Legal. I'm meeting with Caroline Webb about the Neurotech licensing agreement.
Excuse me, the delivery entrance is around the side. 5 words. That's all it took to unravel 12 years of unchecked bias and cost a Fortune 500 company $15 million. But this story isn't really about money. It's about something far more insidious, far more painful. It's about the invisible tax that successful people of color pay every single day. The tax of proving you belong in spaces your credentials already earned you access to. The tax of being seen as suspicious before you're seen as skilled. The tax of carrying a briefcase worth more than some people's monthly rent and still being told to go around back. Before we dive into this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a mirror, and by the end of this, you're going to see something in that mirror that'll make you uncomfortable, angry, or maybe, just maybe, you'll see yourself. This story has a twist that'll hit you in the chest. A moment where everything you thought you understood gets flipped upside down. And I promise you, if you stay with me until the end, you'll never look at a corporate lobby the same way again. So subscribe now, because we're about to walk into a building where credentials mean nothing, where assumptions cost millions, and where one man's Wednesday afternoon becomes a $19 million lesson in what it really means to belong. Now, let me take you to Chicago, a Wednesday afternoon in late autumn, the kind of day where the wind cuts through the downtown corridors and the sky hangs heavy and gray over Lake Michigan. Sterling Pharmaceuticals' tower stood 62 stories tall on South Wacker Drive, its facade of dark glass reflecting the Chicago skyline like a corporate mirror. Inside that building, executives made decisions worth billions. Scientists developed drugs that would save lives. Lawyers negotiated deals that shaped entire industries. And at the ground floor, behind a marble reception desk in a lobby designed to intimidate and impress, sat a woman named Patricia Morrison. For 14 years, Patricia had controlled who walked through those doors. 14 years of checking IDs, printing badges, directing traffic. 14 years of deciding in split seconds who looked like they belonged and who didn't. She'd been praised for her vigilance. Her supervisor called her thorough. Building management considered her an asset. The executives who sailed past her desk without a second glance appreciated how she kept the lobby secure, professional, orderly. What nobody seemed to notice, or maybe nobody wanted to notice, was the pattern. 53 complaints, 53 separate incidents over 14 years where professionals of color had been questioned, redirected, made to feel like intruders in a building where they had every right to be. 53 times someone had raised their hand and said, "This isn't right." 53 times management had dismissed it. Security protocol, they said. Better safe than sorry. She's just being careful. Nobody wanted to say the word. Nobody wanted to acknowledge what was really happening in that marble lobby with its expensive art and its carefully curated image of corporate professionalism. But Wednesday afternoon, everything was about to change. Marcus Chen was 44 years old, and he'd spent the last 18 years building a reputation as one of Chicago's finest corporate attorneys. Let me tell you about Marcus, because his story matters. He grew up on the South Side in Bronzeville, in a neighborhood where opportunity wasn't handed out freely. His father worked at the post office for 37 years, sorting mail in the pre-dawn darkness before most of the city woke up. His mother cleaned offices downtown, taking the red line at 5 a.m. to vacuum conference rooms and scrub executive bathrooms in buildings not so different from Sterling Tower. They'd worked themselves to exhaustion to give Marcus and his younger brother a chance. No family vacations, no new cars. Every spare dollar went into a college fund they kept in a savings account at the local credit union, watching it grow dollar by precious dollar. Marcus had been brilliant from the start, top of his class at Whitney Young High School, full scholarship to Northwestern University, where he studied economics and political science, then Harvard Law School, Harvard, where he graduated magna cum laude and served as an editor on the Law Review. His parents had sat in that Cambridge auditorium at his graduation, his mother crying so hard she could barely breathe, his father gripping the armrests of his chair like he was afraid the moment might disappear if he let go. Marcus had clerked for a federal judge in the Seventh Circuit. He joined Caldwell and Morrison, one of Chicago's white shoe law firms, at 29. By 36, he'd made partner. The youngest partner in the firm's 94-year history. His specialty was pharmaceutical law, complex regulatory work, licensing agreements, patent disputes. The kind of work where companies paid $950 an hour for his expertise and considered it a bargain. Chicago Lawyer magazine had named him one of the top attorneys under 45. He'd negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He'd represented some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And that Wednesday afternoon, he walked into Sterling Tower wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit, carrying a leather Mont Blanc briefcase, on his way to finalize a $285 million licensing agreement that had taken 6 months to negotiate. He was 8 minutes early, professional, prepared. This was his 6th visit to this building for various stages of the negotiation. He walked through the revolving doors, his dress shoes clicking against the marble floor, and approached the reception desk where Patricia Morrison sat. Before he could open his mouth, before he could say his name or state his business, before he could do anything except exist in that space, Patricia looked up and made her assumption. "Excuse me, the delivery entrance is around the side." Marcus stopped walking. For just a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The ambient noise of the lobby, the distant elevator chimes, the muted conversations, the hum of the ventilation system. All of it faded into white noise. He'd heard variations of this before. Too many times to count. At restaurants where hosts assumed he was there to bus tables. At country clubs where staff asked if he was looking for the service staff. At airports where gate agents questioned whether he was really flying first class. But this was different. This was a client's building, a place where he'd been multiple times. A place where, in less than 10 minutes, he was supposed to sit across from Sterling's general counsel and 2 CEOs to sign documents that would change the trajectory of a biotech startup. "I'm not making a delivery," Marcus said, his voice controlled, professional. "I have a 2 o'clock appointment." Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. "An appointment with which department?" "Legal. I'm meeting with Carolyn Webb about the Neurotech licensing agreement." You could see the skepticism written across Patricia's face, the way her lips pressed together, the way her eyes traveled from Marcus's face to his suit, to his briefcase, and back again, as if trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense to her. "With the general counsel?" Her tone made it clear she found this highly unlikely. "Are you sure you're in the right building?" Marcus glanced at his watch. 1:54. "I'm certain. I've been here 5 times already for earlier negotiation sessions. My firm represents Sterling. If you check your visitor log, you'll see Marcus Chen from Caldwell and Morrison, scheduled for 2 o'clock with Caroline Webb." Patricia didn't check the log. She just sat there, staring at him, her hands hovering over her keyboard, but not typing, not clicking, not doing anything, except trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she expected to see. "Your firm," she said slowly. "And what exactly is your role there?" That question that she never would have asked if Marcus had been white. That question that assumed he couldn't possibly be what he was claiming to be. "I'm an attorney," Marcus said, and now the anger was starting to break through the professional veneer, creeping into his voice like heat rising. "I'm a partner at Caldwell and Morrison, and I'm now late because you assumed I was here to deliver something instead of negotiate something." Patricia's face flushed. "I wasn't assuming anything. I was just trying to direct you." "Direct me where? To the service entrance?" "I'm wearing a $3,000 suit. I'm carrying a briefcase with legal documents for a deal worth $285 million. I told you I have an appointment with your general counsel. So tell me, what about this situation suggested I was making a delivery?" The lobby had gone quiet. Other visitors had stopped, were watching. Security guards were paying attention. Everyone in that space understood exactly what was happening, even if nobody wanted to say it out loud. Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I just thought..." "You thought what? That black men in expensive suits must be here to fix something, deliver something, certainly not negotiate something." A voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Chen?" Marcus turned. A woman in her 50s, blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a navy suit. Jennifer, Caroline Webb's executive assistant. He'd met her on previous visits. Jennifer, Marcus said, his jaw tight. I've been standing here being told to use the delivery entrance while your receptionist questions whether I actually have an appointment. Jennifer's expression went from professional courtesy to shocked disbelief in the space of a heartbeat. What? She turned to Patricia, and her voice dropped to a tone Marcus had heard in courtrooms, the voice of someone who was furious but maintaining control. Mr. Chen is outside counsel. He's been here multiple times. He has a meeting right now to finalize a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Why on earth would you send him to the delivery entrance? I didn't know, Patricia started. You didn't check, Jennifer cut her off. You didn't ask his name. You didn't look at your log. You just looked at him and made an assumption. Do you understand what you've done? The lobby was completely silent now, everyone watching this confrontation unfold. Print his badge, Jennifer said, her voice cold as January wind off the lake. Right now. And I'm going to need your supervisor's name because Mr. Chen's time is worth $950 an hour, and you just wasted 15 minutes of it based on nothing but what you assumed when you looked at him. Patricia's hands were shaking as she finally clicked her mouse and brought up the visitor log. Right there, exactly where Marcus had said it would be. Marcus Chen, Caldwell and Morrison. 2:00 p.m., Caroline Webb, executive access, everything he'd told her. All of it right there in front of her, if she'd bothered to look. I'll need to speak with HR before I leave today, Marcus said quietly. This isn't acceptable, and it's not the first time it's happened in this building. Jennifer nodded sharply. Absolutely. Please come with me. The elevator was silent except for the soft ping as they passed each floor. Jennifer was texting rapidly, her thumbs flying across her phone screen, alerting Caroline Webb that something had gone very, very wrong. When the doors opened on the 58th floor, Caroline was waiting. Caroline Webb was 52, one of the most respected general counsels in the pharmaceutical industry. Korean American, she'd built her career on brilliance and tenacity, smashing through barriers in an industry that had tried to keep her on the margins. She looked at Marcus's face, saw the tension in his jaw, the controlled anger in his eyes, and she knew. Marcus, she said, what happened? Your receptionist told me to use the delivery entrance before I could even give my name, questioned whether I had an appointment with you, refused to check her log, asked what I do, implying I couldn't possibly be an attorney, wasted 20 minutes while I'm supposed to be finalizing the Neurotech deal. Caroline's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, horror, and then pure fury. Jennifer texted me, but I thought... She shook her head. This actually happened in front of witnesses. Multiple witnesses, Marcus confirmed. And, Caroline, I need to be very clear about something. If this isn't addressed immediately and thoroughly, Caldwell and Morrison will reconsider our relationship with Sterling. I can't bring junior associates to a client site where they'll be profiled at the front desk. I can't subject other attorneys of color in my firm to this treatment. No amount of revenue is worth that. The threat was real, and Caroline knew it. Caldwell and Morrison brought Sterling nearly $4 million in annual legal fees. But more than that, this was about whether Sterling could function as a modern corporation that worked with diverse professionals. Come to my office, Caroline said, her voice tight. We'll close the Neurotech deal. It's too important to derail. But the moment we're done, I'm calling HR directly. This gets addressed today. The conference room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The Neurotech CEO was there, a nervous man in his 40s who'd mortgaged everything to develop a breakthrough treatment for Parkinson's disease. Sterling's CEO was there, a silver-haired executive in his 60s who commanded rooms with casual authority. They signed documents, they shook hands, they opened champagne. The Neurotech CEO thanked Marcus with tears in his eyes. This deal would save his company, would bring his drug to millions of patients who needed it. Sterling's CEO praised Marcus's brilliant negotiation, his attention to detail, his ability to find solutions that protected both sides. Everyone celebrated, everyone except Marcus. He'd just closed one of the biggest deals of his career. 6 months of work culminating in this moment. $285 million. His firm would earn over $2 million in fees. His client was ecstatic, but all Marcus could think about was Patricia Morrison's face when she'd told him to use the delivery entrance. All he could feel was the humiliation of being questioned, doubted, treated like an intruder in a space where he'd been invited, where he was being paid nearly $1,000 an hour for his expertise. Victory felt hollow, professional triumph overshadowed by racial humiliation. After the clients left, Marcus sat in a different conference room with Sterling's HR director, a serious woman named Margaret Sullivan, who'd been with the company for 20 years. Marcus recounted everything: the immediate assumption, the delivery entrance comment, the credential questioning, the refusal to check the log, the visible skepticism, the implication that someone who looked like him couldn't be an attorney. Margaret took notes, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Mr. Chen," she said when he finished, "we take this extremely seriously. We have high-definition security footage of the lobby with audio. We will review it completely and take appropriate action." "Appropriate action meaning what?" Marcus asked. "A warning, diversity training. Because if this gets buried like I suspect other complaints have been buried, my firm walks. Immediately." "This will not be buried," Margaret said firmly. "You have my word." Marcus left at 4:45, 3.5 hours after arriving. He'd closed a major deal. His firm would earn substantial fees. His client was thrilled. His work had been exceptional, but he felt exhausted, humiliated, angry. He sat in his car in the parking garage for 15 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the rage and frustration coursing through him. He thought about his parents, about how hard they'd worked, about how proud they'd been when he made partner, about how their faces would fall if they knew their son, their brilliant, accomplished son, had been told to use the delivery entrance at a client's building. He thought about the younger attorneys at his firm, the associates of color who looked up to him as proof that success was possible. What would they think if they knew even partners got profiled? Would it discourage them? Would they wonder if the struggle ever ended? He thought about his wife, Jennifer, who carried her own experiences of being an Asian American professional in predominantly white spaces. The cumulative weight of these incidents, the way they never fully disappeared. Each new one, adding to the burden. That evening, he called his managing partner, Richard Caldwell, the founding partner who'd mentored Marcus since his first day at the firm. Richard listened without interrupting. "That's completely unacceptable," Richard finally said, his voice hard with anger. "Let's see how they handle it. If they bury this, if they try to sweep it under the rug with some bullshit diversity training and a slap on the wrist, we drop them. I don't care about the revenue. I don't care about the relationship. Nobody treats our partners like that." The investigation moved fast. Margaret Sullivan pulled the lobby footage, high-definition video with crystal-clear audio. It showed everything. Marcus approaching the desk professionally, Patricia's immediate dismissal, the delivery entrance comment within seconds. Before Marcus had said a single word, the credential questioning, the refusal to check the log, all of it documented in painful detail. But Margaret didn't stop there. She pulled footage from the past 18 months. She analyzed every single visitor interaction at Patricia Morrison's desk. She looked for patterns, for disparities, for evidence of bias. And she found it. Oh God, she found it. Over 18 months, Patricia had redirected or questioned 68 visitors. 68 people sent to service entrances or subjected to extensive credential verification despite having scheduled appointments. 61 were people of color. 7 were white. When cross-referenced with the appointment logs, 53 of those 68 had pre-scheduled meetings with Sterling executives. They were invited guests, business partners, professionals with every right to be there, treated as suspicious based solely on how they looked. Margaret went further. She contacted as many of those 68 people as she could track down. She asked them to provide statements. The stories poured in. An Indian software engineer who'd been sent to the vendor entrance despite meeting with the CTO about a multi-million-dollar contract. A black marketing executive from Leo Burnett who'd been asked repeatedly what he was there to repair while waiting to pitch a campaign to Sterling's CMO. A Latina finance analyst from Morgan Stanley who'd been questioned so extensively that her client had to come down to the lobby to personally vouch for her credibility. a Chinese-American architect who'd won the bid to design Sterling's new research facility and had been told the service entrance was more appropriate for contractors. The pattern was undeniable, systematic, pervasive. Patricia Morrison had been racially profiling visitors for years. 53 complaints filed over 14 years, all dismissed. Nobody had connected the dots. Nobody had looked for patterns. Nobody had analyzed the data. Patricia Morrison was fired within 1 week. The termination letter was direct and damning. Ms. Morrison engaged in discriminatory behavior toward business visitors based on race over a period of 14 years. Security footage and appointment logs confirm systematic redirection of people of color to service entrances despite valid appointments, questioning of credentials with skepticism not applied to white visitors, and creation of hostile experiences for clients, consultants, and professional partners. Her actions violated company policy, federal and state anti-discrimination laws, damaged Sterling Pharmaceuticals' reputation, and jeopardized business relationships worth millions of dollars. Employment terminated immediately, ineligible for rehire. Patricia tried to fight it. Her attorney argued she was just being cautious, just following security protocols, just doing her job the way she'd been trained. But the video footage destroyed that defense. The footage showed her waving white visitors through with barely a glance. It showed her checking logs meticulously for some visitors while refusing to check for others. It showed the disparate treatment so clearly, so obviously, that even Sterling's own attorneys admitted the case was indefensible. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with just Patricia's termination. He wanted systemic change. He wanted to make sure this never happened again. He met with Sterling's CEO personally, a tall man named Robert Harrison, who'd run the company for 12 years and prided himself on Sterling's progressive reputation. "Your lobby is the first impression clients get of your company," Marcus told him. "When that first impression is racial profiling, it poisons everything that comes after. Your receptionist told me to use the delivery entrance before I gave my name. She looked at a black man in an expensive suit and assumed I was there to fix something, not negotiate something. How many relationships have been damaged? How many talented people decided not to work with Sterling after being humiliated in your lobby?" Robert Harrison looked pale, shaken. "Mr. Chen, you're absolutely right. This is unacceptable. We're implementing immediate reforms." Within 30 days, reforms were in place. All reception staff required to complete bias training every 6 months, not annually. Written protocols requiring appointment verification before any assumptions about visitor purpose. Mystery shopper program using diverse testers quarterly to audit reception experiences. Direct hotline for reporting discriminatory treatment. Monthly statistical analysis of all redirections and credential verifications with immediate investigation of any disparities. Explicit requirement to ask visitors their name and appointment before suggesting any entrance. But Marcus still filed suit. He tracked down other victims. 27 joined as plaintiffs, all professionals of color, all with scheduled appointments, all humiliated. An architect, a McKinsey consultant, a patent attorney from Boston, a pharmaceutical scientist who'd been interviewing for a senior position, a Goldman Sachs analyst, a university professor consulting on drug development, a tech entrepreneur pitching Sterling on a partnership, each with stories of being questioned, redirected, treated with suspicion, while white professionals sailed through unchallenged. The lawsuit named Sterling for negligent supervision, for creating a hostile environment for business visitors of color, and for failing to address documented discrimination despite 53 formal complaints over 14 years. The damages sought were both compensatory, for humiliation, emotional distress, and damage to professional reputation, and punitive, to send a message that this kind of systematic bias would be costly. Sterling's attorneys gave their honest assessment. The video was damning. The pattern was undeniable. The company had ignored 53 complaints. The plaintiff group included highly credentialed professionals whose testimony would be compelling at trial. Recommendation: settle quickly and generously. The case settled in 9 months. $19 million divided among 28 plaintiffs. Marcus received $4 million. Others received between $300,000 and $1.8 million depending on severity and documented impact on their professional reputation. The settlement required Sterling to maintain the reforms for 7 years, with annual third-party audits conducted by an independent civil rights organization. At Caldwell and Morrison, the diversity committee debated dropping Sterling despite the settlement. The argument was straightforward. Representing a company that had tolerated such systematic discrimination sent the wrong message to the firm's attorneys of color, to potential recruits, to clients who cared about social responsibility. But the reforms were substantial. The apology was genuine. Carolyn Webb personally committed to ensuring nothing like this happened again. The firm voted to continue the relationship, but on probation. Any similar problems would end it immediately. The story became a case study, not because of violence or dramatic confrontation, but because it showed how bias operates in supposedly professional spaces, how assumptions made in split seconds shape interactions, how front desk staff can undermine the diversity initiatives that executives publicly champion, how discrimination patterns persist for years without data analysis. Marcus spoke at the Illinois Bar Association conference 6 months later. Standing before 700 attorneys in a ballroom at the Hilton, he told his story publicly. "I'm a partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious firms," he said. "I wear custom suits. I carry a briefcase worth more than most people's monthly car payment. I speak with an Ivy League vocabulary. I close deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But none of that mattered to Sterling's receptionist. She saw my skin and decided I was there to deliver something, not negotiate something. That assumption happened before I spoke, before I gave my name, before I did anything except exist in that space. It was instantaneous and entirely racial." He paused, looking out at the mostly white audience. "If this happens to me, with all my credentials and privilege and professional success, imagine what happens to people with less protection. Black delivery drivers, Latino maintenance workers, Asian food service staff entering corporate buildings. How are they treated? With what level of suspicion and hostility? And how many of them can fight back?" The room was silent. "This isn't about one racist receptionist," Marcus continued. "Patricia Morrison didn't act in a vacuum. She profiled 68 people over 14 years. 53 formal complaints were filed. All 53 were dismissed. That's not one person's prejudice. That's institutional failure. That's a system that valued a receptionist's biases over the dignity of invited guests and business partners." The speech went viral in legal circles. HR departments used it in training. Law firms examined their own practices. Corporations audited their reception areas. The case forced an uncomfortable reckoning with bias in supposedly professional spaces. Even Caldwell and Morrison audited their own reception. They discovered subtle disparities, nothing as egregious as Sterling, but enough to warrant corrective training and new protocols. They acknowledged that if it could happen at a client's office, it could happen at their own. For Marcus, the settlement brought a measure of justice, but it didn't erase the damage. He found himself avoiding client offices when possible. He insisted on meetings at his firm, on his turf, where he controlled the environment. When he had to visit other locations, he'd call ahead, ensure someone would meet him in the lobby, avoid any interaction with reception desks. The hypervigilance was exhausting, and it never fully disappeared. 2 years after the Sterling incident, Marcus was in San Francisco for a client meeting. Different city, different company, different lobby. He walked in, wearing an impeccable suit, carrying his briefcase. Before he could speak, the receptionist asked, "Are you here for a pickup?" Marcus felt exhaustion wash over him. The anger, the déjà vu, the crushing realization that no matter how successful he became, someone would always see his skin before his credentials. He breathed slowly, controlled his voice. "No, I'm an attorney. 2:30 appointment. Check your log." She checked immediately, apologized quickly, printed his badge, everything correct, but the damage was done. The assumption made again. Marcus closed his deal brilliantly, a $180 million merger that would take months to finalize. But driving back to his hotel, he called his wife. "I'm tired," he told her, his voice heavy. "So tired. Every new client means proving I'm not the help. Every lobby is a test. I'm a partner. I've closed billions in deals collectively over my career, but I still get asked if I'm making a delivery." His wife said what she always said, "You're not just doing this for yourself. Young black attorneys see you succeeding. see you fighting back, see you refusing to accept this. That matters. It does, Marcus agreed, but I wish it didn't have to. So here's what we're left with. What changes now? Do corporations finally audit their reception desks before lawsuits force them to? Do they train staff to verify appointments before making assumptions? Do they understand that diversity initiatives ring hollow when visitors of color are sent to service entrances? Because if we don't fix the systems that allowed Patricia Morrison to profile 68 visitors over 14 years without consequence, if we don't address the assumptions that teach reception staff to see black people in suits as workers rather than executives, if we don't create accountability before patterns reach dozens of victims, then we're just waiting for the next lobby, the next receptionist, the next attorney told they don't belong in a space where they're being paid nearly $1,000 an hour for their expertise. Patricia Morrison lost her job. That's consequence. 28 plaintiffs received $19 million. That's partial justice. But settlements don't erase the humiliation of being told to use the delivery entrance. They don't prevent the next reception desk from harboring the same biases. They don't change the fact that successful black professionals still have to prove they belong in spaces where white professionals are automatically assumed to fit. Marcus still practices law, still closes major deals, still represents pharmaceutical companies and biotechs and venture capital firms. But he carries the weight of knowing his next client meeting might start with someone assuming he's there to fix something rather than negotiate something. That vigilance never fully disappears. That's the tax successful black professionals pay daily. The invisible burden of constantly proving your credentials, your worth, your right to occupy space. This story isn't just about Patricia Morrison and Marcus Chen. It's about all of us. It's about whether we're willing to acknowledge that bias operates in marble lobbies with expensive art just as much as it operates anywhere else. It's about whether we're willing to look at the data, see the patterns, and act before reaching dozens of complaints. It's about whether we create systems of accountability or systems of protection for people who profile others based on nothing but skin color. Because here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Patricia Morrison probably didn't think of herself as racist. She probably would have been offended by that accusation. She probably thought she was just being careful, just following her instincts, just keeping the building secure. But racism isn't just burning crosses and slurs. It's also the split-second assumption that a black man in a Tom Ford suit must be there to deliver something. It's the instinct that tells you to question credentials you wouldn't question if the face were white. It's the pattern of behavior that treats people of color as suspicious while waving white people through without a second thought. And when that racism is allowed to operate unchecked for 14 years, when 53 complaints are dismissed, when nobody analyzes the data or looks for patterns, when the system protects the person profiling instead of the people being profiled. That's not just one person's prejudice, that's institutional racism. That's the kind of bias that's baked into the structure, into the practices, into the unexamined assumptions about who belongs and who doesn't. So where do we go from here? We demand better. We refuse to accept that this is just how things are. We insist that corporations analyze their reception data monthly, not after lawsuits. We require that staff face consequences after 3 incidents, not 68. We create systems where people like Marcus Chen don't have to spend emotional energy preparing for the possibility of being profiled every time they walk into a client's building. We recognize that diversity and inclusion aren't just about hiring numbers or employee resource groups. They're about whether a law firm partner can walk into a Fortune 500 company's lobby without being told to go around back. That's the standard. That's what accountability looks like. And until we meet that standard, we'll keep telling these stories. We'll keep exposing these patterns. We'll keep demanding that marble lobbies with corporate art become spaces where professional competence is assumed for everyone, regardless of skin color. Because Marcus Chen deserved better. The other 67 people Patricia Morrison profiled deserved better. And every professional of color who's ever been questioned, redirected, or treated as suspicious in a space where they had every right to be, they all deserve better. The question is, are we willing to do the work to make it better? If this story made you feel something, anger, sadness, recognition, or even uncomfortable truth, then hit that like button right now. Because that feeling, that's exactly why these stories need to be told. Share this video. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it where it'll make people think twice before making assumptions, because change doesn't happen in silence. It happens when we refuse to let these patterns stay hidden. And subscribe. Hit that bell, because next week, I'm bringing you another story that'll shake you the same way this one did. Another truth that needs light. Another voice that deserves to be heard. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been profiled like Marcus? Or have you witnessed it happen and stayed silent? Let's talk about it. Because uncomfortable conversations are where real change begins. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, marble lobbies aren't neutral spaces. They're battlegrounds, and we're not done fighting. Thank you for watching.